Hello everyone, it's Weston Eyes with another video forecast. In today's video, we break down the upcoming severe weather that is coming to a close over here on the East Coast, along with our next storm system. Starting out with the day one outlook that has come out here. These are the remnants, but starting off here on the West Coast, you can tell we do have a general thunderstorm risk. Lots of rain is going to be falling. Nothing severe is expected out of that. We move over here to the East Coast, and you can tell we still do have an extremely large risk for severe weather all across this eastern coast, with a large slight risk of severe weather in play still. And then we do have a more condensed but still a very large enhanced risk of severe weather in play. Now, we are not going to go over this, as this is really starting to die out. But we are going to be taking a look here for in the future. That system will end up dying out, but tomorrow we have another severe risk, and this one I do think is going to be quite intense. Why do I say that? We have lots of instability along with lots of wind shear. If we go ahead and take a look at this day 2 outlook, you can tell we have a large marginal threat extending from southern Texas all the way up into portions of Wisconsin, southern Minnesota. So we are watching this. You can tell this is surrounded by an extremely large slight risk extending from south central Texas all the way back up and along that Wisconsin and Illinois border. Then the SPC actually did recently add this smaller enhanced risk. Now, I do expect a shift to the south with this enhanced risk. How far south is still a question. We may get it down around this area. We may only get it to the border of Oklahoma and Kansas. I do expect a bit more to the northeast shift and a bit more to the southeast shift. Moving on to the risk, you can tell now the tornado risk, it is much smaller than the risk overall. You can tell we do have a large 2% along with a large 5% tornado risk. Now here we have our 10% hatched risk up here in Kansas. And this is where I'm thinking that we could get a shift to the south on this tornado risk and our wind or hail to the northeast. Now, we are going to be watching for some long track violent tornadoes in this area, but don't get too caught up in the risk area, as if you live in any of the green, brown, or the yellow, you still are going to have a chance at a tornado. Moving on to the day 2 wind outlook, you can tell that's much bigger. We have a large 5% risk for damaging winds in excess of 75 to 80 miles an hour, with a large 15% chance surrounding that. But the main threat is still here in this enhanced risk with a 30% non-hatched wind threat. So definitely going to be having to watch that as well. But here we're looking at a bit of a tornado and a hail setup. As you can tell, we have our 5% hail set up, but you can tell we have it quite a large 15% hail risk. But you can tell we also have this hatched 15% and 30% hail risk. This is indicating a higher chance of 2-inch plus in diameter hail. And I do feel we could either see a severe weather or even tornado outbreak out of this setup. You can tell we do have a 30% hatched hail risk. I do think we could see 3 to 3.5 inches in size of hail in this area. Now, definitely it could be a lot smaller, and that is what we hope for, but you could never be too sure with these setups. Moving on to the day 3 outlook. No, this is not the same outlook that we just had. This is not a map that we just showed you. This is a very similar outlook for severe weather on the day 3 outlook. You can tell we have a large enhanced risk along with a marginal and slight risk that are extremely big. They all extend from the Canada border all the way down here into portions of southern Texas. I do anticipate getting a moderate risk of severe weather somewhere in this area for damaging winds, large hail, and long track tornadoes. Not very many details on that right now, so we're going to have to wait and see till tomorrow what the risks are. On the day 4 outlook, we still have a threat of severe weather, as you can tell, all the way up from portions of southwestern Pennsylvania all the way back through portions like the Dallas-Fort Worth and northern Texas area. I do think this setup will be a lot less severe, and I do anticipate a slight risk just to stay. Moving on to models, if you go and look at the NAM, you can tell we are going to see increase in storm coverage up here towards the northeast later tonight. Damaging winds, large hail, and maybe isolated spin-up tornado will be possible, but nothing too crazy. Moving along for tomorrow, you can tell there is still some questions remaining back here of are we going to be seeing discrete cells earlier, or are we just going to get our line of storms that is going to push through? I think both will happen. I do think we will see a few discrete cells back in portions of Oklahoma. And then our line, it is not as intense here on the NAM, but then our setup on the day 3 outlook, it also does not look very intense. So definitely keeping an eye on it very closely, though. Moving on to surface-based CAPE, you can tell down here in the Gulf, got a lot of instability, almost 6,000 joules per kilogram. But that's not what we're worried about. If we go ahead and move ahead, you can tell we are going to get quite a bit of instability here. And I'm watching this area back here in southern Oklahoma for any storms that do get going, as we do have a lot of shear and a lot of CAPE, and that significant tornado parameter is actually way up there. So definitely watching that closely. You can tell even up here into portions of southern Kansas, we still have around 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE, but that will die out fast before we get a return of instability for our next storm system. Moving on to the significant tornado parameter, you can tell we are going to have the chance for an isolated spin-up tornado for the remainder of the night, but you can tell these threats are decently high for these storms. We take a sounding over here and around Norman in the Oklahoma City area, possible hazard type tornado. On the effective layer STP, we are at a 11 out of 11. We have 76 3 CAPE. D CAPE is 1,000. Extremely enlarged totograph. We have 90% match of significant hail, 100% one loose match of tornado, 79 degree storm slinky. This is a overall setup that I think people are underplaying. And if we take like a sounding out here in like the 2.8 even, just to look, you can tell we're still at like around a 5.5 on the STP. You can tell significant hail is definitely the higher threat over here. 3 CAPE is only 8. D CAPE is 930. You can tell a decently enlarged photograph still, though. 77 degree storm slinky. If we go and push that back a bit, like around the 4.7, you can tell this tornado threat down here jumps critically back to about like a 10.9, 11 out of 11. We have 46 3 CAPE, 911 D CAPE, another enlarged totograph, 78 degree storm slinky. This is just overall a setup that I feel is being underplayed. And then we will have another return, as we are going to be watching for more tornadoes. as this is a crazy sounding. Wow, PDS tornado sounding that I just pulled down here in southern Arkansas. Did not expect to pull a PDS tornado sounding, but we did. Shows you that the severity of this storm is very, you cannot underplay this. Looking at the 18Z HRRR, until we are going to be getting those showers, maybe a few tornadoes. Nothing on the strong side, luckily, is anticipated. Moving ahead, this is what we're talking about, is we're watching to see if any of these little supercells fire back here in this really rich area of instability. Now, I do think we are going to get one or two storms that do fire down there. The question is, how long will they stay alive? Because there's going to be a lot of wind in portions of Oklahoma, which are going to help kill these storms, I feel. But then we're going to get this line that marches through QLCS, embedded tornadoes. That's as far out as we can look on the HRRR. Moving on to the HRRR on surface-based CAPE, we can see we are going to have that instability overnight for the remains of the storm system. But then we are going to see another surge of instability. Now, HRRR is not as aggressive with it. You can tell around 3,300 joules per kilogram on CAPE. So it definitely has this died down and toned down a bit, but still cannot underplay this. If we look at the significant tornado parameter, you can tell we are going to get a return where we are going to be able to see some tornadoes. It's back here towards the Norman area, 3.8 STP. We will still pull a possible hazard type tornado sounding in large totograph. Only 24.3 CAPE, 987 D CAPE, and D CAPE stands for downdraft CAPE. But then you can tell we are still going to be seeing the chances if we pull one up here around the Tulsa area at a 2.1. So not even that high. Sorry about that right click. You can see marginal tornado threat in extremely enlarged totograph. If we take it a bit more to the west where we do have a bit more, like a 3.0 STP, you can tell the hazard type shifts fast to tornado in large totograph. So definitely going to be watching this storm system. As even up here in portions of southern Kansas, we are watching for those tornadoes. As you can tell, we're at about a 10.3 out of 11 on that STP. Extremely enlarged totograph. So overall, this is a setup that I feel a lot of people are underplaying. Moving on to the NAM 3KM CONUS, you can tell remains of this storm are going to push offshore. We're going to get our next storm system. As it really does not have those supercells, but it has a more intense line there in Oklahoma and Kansas. As this one, we can actually look at our next setup a tiny bit. Now, moving on to surface-based CAPE, we are going to see our CAPE along the East Coast still be there overnight before dying off. And then we will see a return of instability. And this paints the story like the HRRR. It does have a bit more down here in southwestern and southern Oklahoma. But still, it kind of paints the same picture as the HRRR. Along with the NAM on CAPE for our setup. Now, if we want to look at significant tornado parameter, we are going to see that we are going to have a chance at some strong tornadoes still. You can tell up here in Kansas, if I take a sounding along the border of Oklahoma and southern Kansas, if we pull a tornado possible hazard type a decently enlarged totograph, 78-degree storm slinky. Like I said, I think this storm is being underplayed. I will say that significant tornado parameter does seem to die down pretty fast in northeastern Oklahoma. If we take a sounding over here at a 3.9, we are still pulling a tornado hazard type, a decently high STP, enlarged totograph. As even if I take one like kind of outside that parameter on like a 1.3, we still pull marginal tornado and enlarged totograph. So definitely a big system is about to come through. You can tell yet again if I take a sounding down here, I'm curious, around where I pulled a PDS sounding on the HRRR, I pull another PDS on the NAM 3KN. So definitely 2 to 3 big days ahead of us. Moving on to the next lab COD models, we are going to be going ahead and taking a look at the European model. As whenever we look at this, you can tell remnants move offshore. We get more of a line, a more intense line, it looks like on Wednesday. But you can tell here on the European as well. About to get extremely active, it seems. So if we go and look at most unstable cape / shear and pull this back to the beginning of the run, you can tell we are going to be seeing a return of instability for tomorrow, along with lots of instability on Wednesday. So definitely something we are watching for. One last thing I'd like to show you are some graphics I had made. Here's what I think the watch probabilities are for tomorrow. I think the chance of seeing a watch of some level is high. I think we will see a severe thunderstorm watch somewhere probably. So I put high confidence on that. I put high confidence on a tornado watch too. But our overall forecast confidence is at a moderate. Moving on to the severe potential for Kansas and Oklahoma for tomorrow, we do have an enhanced tornado risk along with the enhanced wind and hail risk. Flooding risk is at a slight because excessive rainfall is going to start to be a problem here over the next coming days in portions of southern Oklahoma. Hope you guys all did enjoy today's video. It was a bit longer than expected, but I hope you guys will drop a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.